to another episode here for the Fun Report, Mindful Media and Communication back in effect. Christmas spirit all around us. More on this probably in the next episode. Today I want to actually talk about a few things that just popped up while I was preparing for a podcast. And I thought, hey, I want to talk about it. Pretty different topics, yet related somehow. And you can see it from the title of the episode, the critical look at media framing, Hollywood sequels, music, anti-wokeness, and so on. And I will try to make sense of all that and kind of tie it all together. So, yeah, welcome back. If you're not a returning listener, if you are, I very much appreciate it. If you're not, make sure to like, share, subscribe to the thing, hit that bell so that you're always up to date for the latest breakdowns when it comes to mindful media on communication. So we're taking a look at what happens in the media, why does it happen, breaking it down with media theories, communication theories, and trying to make sense of it. Okay, so this week I'll be hitting three heavy, different, yet I think very fascinating topics. So first, I'm going to talk about the United Healthcare shooter, because I think it's just a very interesting story how the media covers that whole incident. And so how's this guy been framed across different channels? Some call him a criminal, others call him a hero. Yeah, and I'm going to try to unpack a few theories that might play into how different media channels portray the guy and why. Then I'll be talking about Moana 2. Just been to the cinema this past week. When I wrote down the notes, I wrote down Disney's latest stumble. And now I feel kind of bad saying that, but that's one of those sequels that just feel like a time capsule from like when the original came out. Like nothing really changed, right? You look at it, it looks like from 8 years ago, but unfortunately, not in a good way. It just has the looks, but not the feels of the movie from 8 years ago. More on this in the Moana 2 segment. And then finally, straight out of Compton, looking at Ice Cube's new album, because I mean, you can already tell from my cool way of dressing that I'm all about hip hop. And so Ice Cube has a new album, and I listened to it, and it's called Man Down. And yeah, sometimes, I mean, they say it's not about how often you get knocked down, it's about how often you get up. But sometimes you might want to stay down, because I think it's more like an attempt of like a very veteran artist at like staying relevant at like all costs. It's a whole long rant disguised as rap from my point of view. And so take it with a grain of salt, obviously, but I'll break it down why I think that as well. So let's jump in to the first topic of the day, the United Healthcare shooter, right? Villain, victim, hero, it's all in the story, right? And so there are a few theories that I want to break down, okay? So first, you're probably all familiar with the topic. The United Healthcare shooter that then led to a very stark divide. Some say it's a violent criminal, you can't just walk around killing people. Well, obviously. Others argue he's a symptom of like systemic failure, because like no one, I mean, how United Healthcare is only paying, I just heard, I'm not sure if it's true, 2% of the claims they're getting, for example. And some corners of social media might even label him a hero for targeting like a corporation that they despise because of what I just said, right? So there are obviously a few key theories in play that we can look at. And one of those theories we call in media studies framing theory, okay? So media, as you know, doesn't just report facts. It frames those facts in a way that they will hope makes us understand them in the way they want, right? So conservative outlets might emphasize mental health because they want to avoid systemic discussions, for example. Right? Liberal media then might frame it as part of like America's like maybe broader gun violence epidemic, for example, right? Everybody's had like it's so easy to get guns and so on. And social media, of course, goes rogue in all the ways, right? Some corners presenting him as like this anti-corporate vigilante. Then, of course, other outlets are like focusing on his manifesto that they found on him. Others say the guy that they caught isn't even the shooter. He has different eyebrows, for example, right? So it's going like in all different directions. The one thing that's in common is it's all been framed from the outlets that are pushing those narratives. Okay, so that's the framing theory. Yeah, so as an outlet, you frame the facts that you have in a way that you would hope that your audience will understand it in a certain way. Okay, so that's the framing theory. You don't tell your audience exactly what to think, similar to agenda setting, right? But you are like, hey, I mean, look at the facts inside of the frame that we present you. Yeah, he's had a mental health issues. His mom didn't get the treatment she needed to, and so that's what led to him doing this, for example. Or, nah, he's just a rogue vigilante dude. Like, come on, you cannot just walk around killing people. Like, what the hell, right? So different ways of framing it, and yeah, one thing they all have in common is they try to make it as extreme as possible, because extremes lead to interaction, lead to engagement, and that's what they all want, right? Engagement. And another theory really like goes hand in hand with like engagement. We call it the moral panic theory. You know, one of my favorite theories, not because of what it does, but because of how important it is to understand. The moral panic theory, coined in the 17th by a researcher called Stanley Cohen. And moral panic describes how the media creates villains, like in the original text it's called folk heroes, or folk devils, sorry, not heroes, folk devils, to stir like societal fear, okay? So why would you want to do that? If the society is in fear of something, it's easy to capitalize on that. So as a media outlet, if you're scared of something, it's very easy for me to capitalize on your fear, right? I just put out more news specials, more newspaper articles, or in our time now, then more articles online, more social media posts about like something that fears you, that scares you, and you will interact with it. You're like, oh my God, again, what happened? And you will read it and you will share it. Because that's why moral panic is a good thing when it comes to media outlets. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's good for the engagement rate, okay? And that's why they all do it. So that now leads to the United Healthcare shooter. So some might like label him as like a folk devil. Yeah, say, okay, he's that villain, but then that might distract from deeper issues like healthcare inequities, for example, corporate exploitation, and so on. Then others, of course, jumping on like, okay, maybe it's not a folk devil, maybe it's not like him per se being the problem, but what about people just going rogue? There's another panic. Okay, so you can, even if you are like more kind of a conservative outlet, more a liberal outlet, you can use the moral panic theory to your advantage, creating different kinds of, in quotation marks, villains, folk devils, things / people that the audience is afraid of. And if the audience is afraid of it, if they're living in fear, if they're scared of something, they will consume anything that's related to it. And that's what you want as an outlet. And unfortunately, that works very, very, very well. Okay, so we call this, one more time, the moral panic theory. Okay. The third theory I would like to propose that's very much related to all this here is the cultivation theory. The cultivation theory we discussed on this channel many a times. It suggests that heavy media exposure shapes your perception of reality, right? So now, depending on the channels that you follow, viewers might see the shooter like as an isolated lunatic, for example, an inevitable like byproduct of a broken system, or maybe even that hero that we just mentioned. That's like what you see on social media a lot, for example, right? So the cultivation theory suggests the more you consume something in a similar, that talks in a similar manner, maybe even, right? So just as an example, you follow Fox News. Fox News portrays him as like that rogue villain, for example. And the more you consume that, the more you actually believe it and follow it. Similar to if you would be on social media and they say, he's the hero we deserve, we need, or he's the hero we need, not the hero we deserve, and so on. And the more you consume that, the more you probably will believe it. Okay, so that's the cultivation theory. It shapes the perception of reality based on the media that we are consuming. All right? Okay. Then the last theory I want to throw at you in this case is one I think that happens quite a lot. So then the last point that I want to make here in this regard is the heroization of villains. Right? So social media platforms are notorious for reframing villains into like misunderstood anti-heroes. And that happens a lot. And I'm not saying that in this case this guy didn't have a reason or the way he acted, but I mean you can also probably agree that you cannot just walk around killing people, right? But it's not a political podcast, okay? But I just want to point out some media theories that are at play here, and that heroization of villains, turning villains into misunderstood anti-heroes, is something that happens a lot on social media platforms. In this case, frustration with the corporate greed, of course, fuels the narrative, which again, very understandable. Yeah, that then will paint him as a hero. Yeah, this mirrors like phenomena like romanticization of, for example, the Joker character in pop culture, right? Or I mean, those Che Guevara shirts or whatnot, right? So there are always ways in which, especially like in retrospect, but now it happens faster thanks to the internet, of course, villains might be romanticized, heroized, and so on. Okay. So as a bigger picture, to sum up that whole shooter thing, right? In a bigger picture, the shooter is not just the person himself, okay? For the media, right now he's a media construct. He's like molded to fit political and social agendas. That's important to understand. Okay, every time we watch something regarding to the shooter, or we read something, we see something, it's like that media construct that the media outlet wants you to see. So the takeaway here is that media framing doesn't just inform us, it shapes our emotions, biases, and also actions. And that's why we have to be aware of it. So whenever you see something, in this case about the shooter, you have to be aware that the media outlet you're consuming the content on definitely has an agenda, will use framing theory, will use cultivation theory, everything that I just mentioned, to make you kind of follow what they want you to do, want you to understand and interact with their content, okay? So that's something that you should always keep in mind. Okay, but enough of now the United Healthcare shooter. Let's move on to something more positive. I mean, at least it's not death related, okay? Moana 2. Moana, I've been to the cinema for the first time in a while now. Damn, it's expensive. Ridiculous. Also, not many people in the cinema. Crazy how those movie theaters they still keep going. I mean, understandable by those prices, but I mean, maybe make it cheaper so more people go. I don't know. But okay, so Moana, and you heard me in the intro saying that I was not very blown away. So let me explain you why. Maybe you can then convince me of the opposite, okay? But let me explain why I wasn't blown away by Moana 2. First, and that might be the least important point, but the technology, okay? The way it's been animated. I don't see any evolution in the way it's been animated from the original movie. So I understand you want to keep the same vibe, the same style, but it just feels very stagnant. And at points, it's called dubbing, like the voice doesn't match the face. And if it's I watched it in English, okay? So if it's in the original language, shouldn't that not be that bad that you think, wow, this looks bad right now? I understand that you can match, actually you should be able to do actually like in 2024, thanks to like, I don't know, AI and whatnot, you can match the motion sensor tracking, right? Should not be a problem, but okay, even if not. But it was so bad that I thought during the movie, wow, this looks very bad. And if you think this during a movie, it must be very bad, right? And I went in with like all positive vibes. I just watched Moana 1, like 2 days prior or something. So I was like, let's go, I'm in the Moana spirit. Yeah, so the technology looked very stagnant. Yeah, you want the rest to leap forward, right? Instead of wowing with like cool visuals, it feels like they just dusted off the original one, which is 80 years old, and just basically kind of like reused stuff. It was kind of sad. Then I mentioned already the terrible dubbing, right? So just looking at my nose, I can only imagine how it might feel in non-English version, probably even worse. I'm not sure, but the mouth just didn't sing, and it was really, 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 really annoying. Also, the performances, right? The songs. There was nothing that made you feel like the first movie made you feel. And I'm not saying this because I was 8 years younger in the first movie, because like I said, I just watched the first movie the same week I went to the cinema for Moana 2. And Moana 1 made you like teary-eyed, like, oh my God, it's so inspirational. And Moana 2 had just nothing of that, which is just really disappointing, I think. Also, there's no signature anthem in there. There's no How Far I'll Go, right? I'm not the biggest musical nerd, even though I love musicals, don't get me wrong. And How Far I'll Go was amazing in the first Moana musical, in the first Moana movie, right? Like, I mean, everyone remembers that, sings it, is inspired by it. And this sequel, there was nothing memorable in there, no memorable song. I know they want to use like this Go Beyond song, whatever it might be, but it feels so phoned in, it's not even funny. Like, there's no emotional or, cultural resonance, I think. And this leads me to the last point, and then I'm gonna don't want to harp too long on hating a movie. So, because if you liked it, great, let me know. Like, maybe I've had the wrong point of view or something. But those Hollywood cliches that they even reflect in cartoons like this. I think the story, from my point of view, and if you follow the podcast, I'm big on storytelling. Like, I'm very interested in it. I teach those things. So I think it leans into like super tired tropes, which is just really, 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 really annoying, really sad. And hence, I think, from my point of view again, it sacrifices the authenticity that made the first film that, and I want to say, a cultural touchstone, actually. I think it has been really, really important for lots of people that watched it back then. And this is just not happening right now. Like, the story is not as emotional, as thoughtful. It doesn't take you on that emotional journey of growth. Spoiler, the only thing that Moana kind of like goes through is that there always is a way, and that you have to think outside the box sometimes. That's like the growth moment in her in that movie, which is a little bit disappointing. Like, I do see, it's obvious, like, how they try to replicate what they did in the first movie. Like, it's a classical storytelling tropes, right? Narrative arc, like from like the hero's journey is what we call it in storytelling, right? So you have like the main character, and then the main character sets out eventually to face a challenge, and then the main character faces like smaller challenges and then overcomes smaller challenges. And she faces the big challenge, and then you think, oh my God, she's going to fail. But then she rises up again, overcomes the challenge, and then on the way back home, on the way back from the big challenge, she faces another like 2 or 3 minor setbacks, learns something from all of it, of course, makes friends on the way, grows as a character, and then returns to where she started. So that's like the classical hero's journey. And this is very emotional in Moana 1. In Moana 2, like I said, the growth isn't really that I don't know, touchable, if that makes sense. Like, she doesn't grow as much, so I'm trying to say, okay? In the first movie, you see like, oh God, that little girl grows becomes a young woman, if you want to. And in the second movie, she's just like, okay, think outside the box, like, not great, okay? Lots of cliches. I think, instead of, in this case, honoring like more of the Polynesian culture, which it does at times, like with the tattoos and like the names that they use on the island and for the ancestors, from what I can tell from my little research that I did, seem to be like actual Polynesian names, which is great. But it does feel like more like a pander to like this global box office thing. It feels, and you can see it feels like it's a Rock movie. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to hate on The Rock, on Dwayne Johnson, because I enjoy him as a wrestler, but it feels like a Rock movie in cartoon form. And he's the producer, so that's no surprise. yeah, so that's just what really annoyed me. Um, Overall, I think it was a disappointing viewing. It's not the worst movie ever, but it's definitely not a movie I would recommend. Go watch Moana 1 again. Mm. But again, if you're saying, hey, that's your point of view, but I enjoyed it, please do let me know. I do had like I think 2 or 3 moments where I was smiling in there, but I can remember. But just no emotional connection as much as I had with Moana 1. So if you disagree, happy to hear. Right? I'm not trying to hate on you if you like the movie. So please let me know what you think or what you thought about the movie, and maybe I have a different point of view after I listen to you. So I would be happy to hear that. I just think that there's few things that I noted down as that I think Disney's reliance on sequels is like kind of like eroding its creative legacy. My point of view, I think you're such a creative team, you could be better. Um, it looks like that the sequel machine isn't about art, it's like about algorithms, profit margins, and so on. And yeah, the rock touch doesn't help much, I think. And I think that nostalgia can only carry a franchise that far, right? Without innovation, even like beloved properties such as Moana, they will lose their magic eventually. That's why you see like other franchises, they do innovate. They try different things. I mean, that's what Moana learned. Like you have to try different things. So maybe, hey, for Moana 3, try something different. Okay. Okay. Last thing that I want to discuss in this episode is, of course, Man Down by Ice Cube. And God, was I excited when I heard that Ice Cube's dropping a new album. Like, I mean, Ice Cube, right? It's Ice Cube. Yeah, and within like a few songs, and I was ready to love it because I saw a review on a Austrian platform that they were hating on it. I'm like, whoa, if you hate on it, I'm gonna love it. So I was ready to love the album. Okay, I was ready to love the album. Then I listened to the album, and I was like, okay, wow, well, huh. And let me explain. So first of all, I think, well, Ice Cube's beats, the flow, the lyrics, they do feel like echoes of his earlier work, which is okay. Because I mean, you rely on what made you like big and successful, but there's just no freshness or like there's no fire in it. It's more like I know the flows that work, and I'm just gonna reuse them in every single track, which is a bit exhausting. But there's no like oomph to it, no like fire, no like it's not fresh. It's just like oh, it's the same pattern. And what annoys me the most is just that it's like this anti-wokeness. And don't get me wrong, I hate political correctness as much as everybody else, okay? In my age bracket, at least, I guess. But and critique is fine. They critique everybody, everything. But Man Down, the album, feels like a manifesto, if you will, against like anything that's labeled progressive. And again, I'm very much anti-PC. Like, hey, yo, Jordan Peterson, let's go. Not with everything, but with the PC stuff. Okay, let's go. But wow, this is so much ranting and hating. It's basically like you being the cancel dude now, just on the anti-cancel side, but you're like complaining about everything. Yeah, songs like cancel that, and it's not about nuance, it's more about like lashing out. It's just very annoying, okay? And that the anti-woke rhetoric feels more like bitter rather than being a meaningful commentary. And that's what I would have wanted from Ice Cube, like some social commentary. And that's why you're like, hey, OG, let's go. But it's more like bitter, understandable, but still like from an OG, like that famous, that good at what he does, it was a bit disappointing, I think. So I think it was a missed opportunity because I think he had a chance to address like current societal issues with death, because that's what he's supposed to do. But instead, the album feels like very reactionary, in my opinion, and it's more stuck in like an echo chamber. It's like just like repeating the same thing over and over again. Like woke is this, woke is that, woke is shit, woke is yeah, yes. But I mean, I know how many tracks, but it's always the same. It's just annoying. There's no fresh viewpoint or anything, and it was a bit disappointing because it's Ice Cube. You have like, sorry, but you have high standards, high expectations for Ice Cube, right? So that was a bit disappointing. And so I thought that like before I wrap things up, I wanted to add like 2 more theories to this because I think that actually fit in well here. So I think one is the two-step flow theory, because the opinion leaders in Ice Cube's demographic, they amplify his anti-woke messages, which then, of course, leads to like further entrenching those divisions that are already there, right? And you can be anti-woke, again, down with PC, I'm all for it. But if you take like a different viewpoint, then maybe more people will come around. Now you're just sitting on the other side throwing stones. You suck, and like, that doesn't help anyone, okay? So yes, we know it sucks, but take a different viewpoint, different angle, and maybe you can get other people to also change their point of view, and then you have a discourse. But people completely missed that opportunity here from my point of view. And one of the theories that I found interesting that fits here too, that I discuss in my class as well, is we call it the cultural hegemony theory, because it's about the concept of like cultural dominance, and I think it's kind of relevant because Ice Cube positions himself as a rebel, but his messaging, right, aligns with those reactionary trends that already gained traction. So he's not the rebel that says something new, something crazy, something like outlandish. He's not. He's the one jumping on the woke shit. You suck. Yes, but it's been there for the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? So give us something new. You're Ice Cube, right? You got an attitude. Show it. Okay. So that was pretty disappointing from my point of view. Again, please let me know what you think about Man Down by Ice Cube. I was just really psyched to see that drop. I was like, yeah, cool, let's go. Listen. And I favorited it right away, and I unfavorited it again, which really feels bad, and I don't like that I admit that. But yeah, because I think, and that's my takeaway for the Ice Cube album, I think music, especially by someone like Ice Cube, should provoke thought, not just reactions, okay? So I think this album now by Ice Cube risks alienating like listeners who once admired his sharp critique of power, like me, and now thinking, yo, dude, you're just throwing stones now, and this is not gonna lead to anything, okay? Because everybody can throw stones. Not everybody is able to sharply critique power like he used to do, but now he's just another one of those dudes that's throwing stones from a higher ground because he's rich and famous, not the rebel that he wants to be, which sucks even more. So, final thoughts here, okay? So now I bring it together. The common threads, okay? Framing, technology, messaging. Okay, 3 takeaways, all right? Ready? Take notes. The United Healthcare shooter shows how narratives are constructed for consumption, right? Different outlets will construct different narratives in different ways, frame it so that we consume it and then believe that frame that they put on that narrative that they put out, we follow that, okay? Number 1. Moana 2 demonstrates that technology and storytelling unfortunately can stagnate when profit takes priority, because clearly the main goal with Moana 2 is just rake in as much money as possible. And yes, every movie wants that, but you would hope that sometimes they have like at least additional motives. Moana 2 is only a money grab from my point of view. And Ice Cube's Man Down just, to me, highlights how messaging can overpower creativity, because he was all hell-bent on just hating on wokeness, which also, he's 5 years late on that. We've been hating on wokeness for a long time now. So dude, you're late. Now bring something new to the table. Don't just jump on what others have been doing for 5 years, okay? Sad. So, in closing, I want to say, and it's been 30 minutes, so it's enough time now. In closing, I want to say, A, be mindful of the media you consume, okay? Mindful media and communication. Question the frames that they put around the media and the news they're showing you. Always demand innovation. Don't settle for less. Don't be like, oh no, it's okay. And don't let messages override the meaning. The meaning matters, okay? All right, until next time, do like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know if you agree with my Man Down and Moana reviews. What do you think about the United Healthcare dude? And yeah, leave a comment, leave a review. That always helps. Until then, stay safe, take care. We'll talk soon. Sarika.